A woman's hands hit the dirt floor hard. Her knees followed. She stayed there, breathing, not from exhaustion but from something closer to giving up. The barn door behind her groaned in the cold wind. Outside, November was stripping everything bare. She had 2 garbage bags with her. One held clothes. The other held what was left of 11 years of marriage. No house key. No car. No plan. Just those 2 bags and a barn that wasn't hers, on land she didn't own. She pulled her knees up. Carol sat against the wall. Then she felt it. A draft. Coming up from below. Not from the door. Not from the gaps in the ceiling. From the floor itself. She went still and pressed her palm flat against the cold dirt. Something was right underneath. What did she find when she lifted that hatch? Stay with me on this one. Her name was Carol Simmons, and she was 54 years old, and she had not planned for any of this. 11 years. That's how long she'd been married to Dale. Not her first marriage, not his. She'd gone in knowing he had a temper and a drinking problem he called stress. What she didn't know, what she only found out when the lawyers got involved, was that Dale had a second bank account she'd never seen, a side business registered in another name, and a plan for the divorce that he'd apparently been running for at least 2 years. By the time it was over, the house went to Dale. He'd owned it before the marriage. The paperwork was airtight. Her legal fees had eaten what little she'd saved. She walked out of the courthouse in March with $340 and a phone 2 months from being shut off. She hadn't told anyone how bad it was. Pride, maybe. Or she just didn't want to see the look on people's faces. Her sister was in Phoenix. Her co-workers at the bank, 6 years at the same job, were co-workers. Not the kind of people you call at midnight and say you're sleeping in your car. Because that's what she was doing. 3 weeks in her car. She'd park in different spots. Church lot, hospital lot, a rest stop once, until a state trooper knocked on the window at 2 in the morning and she panicked and drove off. She got good at it. Back seat folded flat. Wool blanket from the trunk. Windows cracked just enough. The person who changed the immediate situation was a woman named Linda. They'd worked in the same office at the bank. Carol ran into her at a gas station, just buying coffee. And Linda took one look and said, "You're not okay." Not a question. Carol told her enough. Not everything. Enough. Linda mentioned a farm property out on Route 9, past the grain elevator. The Fenton place. Nobody had been out there in years. The woman who owned it had gone to a nursing home. Word was she'd passed away, and nobody had done anything with the property since. "The barn door doesn't latch," Linda said. "I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just telling you the door doesn't latch." Carol drove out there that evening. She walked the perimeter first. The farmhouse was locked tight. She tried every door and window. The barn was different. One door swung open when she pushed it. Old but solid. Thick wooden beams overhead. Dirt floor. 3 horse stalls at the far end. One with hay still baled in the corner. No electricity. No water. But it was out of the wind. She sat in her car for an hour before she went inside. She told herself it was temporary. She had 1 more paycheck coming, her final 2 weeks from the bank, and that would give her enough for a deposit somewhere. She just had to hold out. She lasted 2 nights in the car. Then she moved into the barn. By the 4th day she had a system. A propane camp stove she'd found at a thrift sale for $8. Dried beans and rice. A flashlight with 2 spare batteries. She'd found a wooden crate to use as a table. She swept the dirt floor around the stall where she slept. She propped the barn door in a way that let in daylight without too much wind. She was applying for jobs every morning. Pharmacy, grocery store, the motel on the highway. Nothing back yet, but she applied every day. Made oatmeal on the camp stove, applied for work, told herself she was going to be fine. She almost believed it. Believe me when I say it wasn't dramatic. This wasn't a woman having a breakdown. This was a woman who had spent 3 weeks being functional, quietly, efficiently, invisibly functional, and who was running low on whatever keeps you functional. You can only tell yourself the story so many times before it starts to sound hollow. The story went, "This is temporary. Rock bottom is a place you leave. You don't stay at rock bottom." She'd said it enough that it had started to feel like a fact. But that evening, walking back from the gas station down the road, she'd gone to use the bathroom and fill her water bottle. The cold hit her in a way it hadn't before. Not the kind you adjust to. The kind that gets into your chest and stays. On the walk back, she noticed she wasn't telling herself the story anymore. She didn't decide to stop. It just wasn't coming. She pushed open the barn door, dropped her bags, and went down to the floor. That was the moment from the beginning. The hands, the knees, the draft from below. And now here's what happened next. She pressed her palm flat against the dirt. The draft was real. Steady and faint, but real air moving from somewhere underneath. She picked up her flashlight and swept it across the floor. Nothing obvious at first, but when she crawled toward the back wall, past the second stall, back where the hay was, she found them. Grain sacks, 6 of them stacked flat against each other. Old burlap, rotted at the corners. Set deliberately, not piled randomly. She moved them one by one. Under the 4th sack she found the edge of something wooden. Planks, set flush into the dirt. She moved the rest of the sacks and there it was. A hatch, roughly 3 feet square. An old iron ring handle bolted into the wood. Carol sat back on her heels and looked at it. She told herself to be careful. That somebody might know about this. That it was probably a root cellar and she was about to find 30 years of rotted vegetables. She told herself all of that. Then she grabbed the iron ring and pulled. The hatch came up on the second pull. The hinges were stiff but intact, heavy old iron, well made. A square of darkness opened up beneath her. The draft hit her face immediately, warmer than the barn above. Not warm, but noticeably less cold. She shone her flashlight down. Wooden steps, 8 of them. She could see the edge of a rough stone wall at the bottom. She went down. The room was bigger than she'd expected. She'd been thinking root cellar, narrow, low, cramped. What she found was a space roughly the size of a small bedroom. 10 feet by 12, maybe. The ceiling was just high enough to stand straight. Walls of rough stone, carefully fitted. Floor of packed earth, level and smooth, worn down by years of use. Along the left wall, wooden shelves, floor to ceiling, built solid and square. She touched them. These weren't thrown together. Someone had fitted the joints tight, sanded the edges. Built to last. And on the shelves, canned goods. Dozens of cans. Some with handwritten paper labels. Beans, corn, tomatoes, peaches. Some were clearly very old. But others had barcodes on them. She picked one up. Green beans, brand name ordinary. She checked for a date. Best by 2019. Not ancient, then. Someone had been coming back to restock this place within the last several years. 2 generations of supply sitting side by side on the same shelves. Along the right wall, a narrow metal cot, folded flat against the wall. Rolled mattress beside it. On the shelf above, folded wool blankets. Thick, old but clean. And beside them, a kerosene lantern, a box of matches, 2 more lanterns on the lower shelf, for spare canisters. In the middle of the room, a small wooden table, 2 chairs, a tin cup on the table, as if someone had just stepped out for a moment. Carol turned around slowly with her flashlight. There was more. In the far corner, a small iron door set into the stone, a ventilation shaft. That explained the draft. Beside it, a wooden crate with candles, a hand-crank flashlight, a first aid kit, a transistor radio still in its original box. And on the table, beside the tin cup, a small metal strongbox, old-style, hinged lid, and a stack of journals, their covers worn dark with handling. She opened the strongbox. Inside, nestled in a piece of velvet that had once been red and was now the color of rust, were 7 coins. Large, heavy, gold-colored. She held one up to her flashlight. An eagle on one side. On the other, the profile of a woman. Double eagle, the rim read, $20. The date, 1927. She turned it in the light. She didn't know exactly what she was holding. She knew enough. Old gold coins. American Mint. 1927. That was not nothing. She didn't know the number yet, but she knew it was more than $20. She set it back carefully, closed the box, picked up the top journal. The cover read, Earl Fenton. Inside, the first entry, April 14th, 1933. Earl wrote in short sentences, like someone who chose words the way he chose tools, only what was needed. The bank closed, took what was ours, took 6 years of savings like it cost them nothing. Will not trust banks again. This room will hold what they cannot take. Built it by hand. Margaret doesn't know yet. We'll tell her when it's done. Carol read it again. She read, the bank closed, took what was ours. She understood that. Not the depression, not 1933, but the specific feeling. The vertigo of having something taken from you by a system you'd believed in. She understood it down to the bone. She closed the journal and sat there for a moment at the table in the underground dark, flashlight balanced on its end, and she thought about Earl Fenton digging this room out by hand in the summer of 1933 because he refused to lose what was his a second time. And then she thought about Margaret, because Margaret must have known. Earl had told her eventually he'd written as much, and Margaret had kept coming down here, kept the shelves stocked, kept the lanterns filled. For decades after Earl died. An old woman in her 90s still carrying cans of green beans down those 8 steps. She'd done it because Earl had built it, and because some part of her understood that the people who came after them might need it. Carol climbed back up to the barn, got her backpack and her wool blanket, and came back down. She unfolded the cot, spread her blanket over the wool ones from the shelf. She lit one of the kerosene lanterns. The wick caught on the second match, the kerosene still viable after however many years. The small flame steadied and threw a warm circle of light across the ceiling. She lay down. She thought, I found shelter. Real shelter. Tomorrow I'll think about what all of this means. Tomorrow I'll be careful and smart and figure out the right thing to do. Tonight I just need this. She pulled the blankets up to her chin. Outside. She could feel it more than hear it. The wind pushed against the barn walls. Down here, nothing. The stone absorbed it. The room was still and quiet in a way she hadn't experienced in weeks. She closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, Carol Simmons slept through the night. She woke to footsteps. Not the barn settling. Not wind. Footsteps on the dirt floor directly above her. She went completely still. The lantern had burned out during the night. The room was black. She could feel her own heartbeat. The footsteps stopped. Then a knock on the wall, not the door. 3 hard strikes, testing the structure. A man's voice. Hello? Anybody in here? She didn't answer. Didn't move. A pause. Then the footsteps moved toward the back of the barn. Toward the stalls. She heard hay shift. He stopped almost directly above the hatch. Yeah. His voice dropped like he was on a phone call. There's gear in here. Someone's been staying in the back stall. A pause. I'll do the full walkthrough now. Another pause. Yes, sir. The call ended. Footsteps moved back toward the door. The barn door opened and shut. She stayed underground for 30 minutes. Then she climbed up, moved the grain sacks back over the hatch and waited. An hour later he knocked. This time he identified himself right away. His name was Todd. Harlow Property Development. Clipboard in hand, company vest, early 40s. Not hostile exactly, but very sure of himself. He told her the property was being acquired through a tax lien claim. The Fenton estate had outstanding property taxes going back several years, and Harlow Development had filed the claim with the county 6 months ago. The process was nearly complete. You'll need to vacate within 48 hours, he said. He held out a paper. That's the official notice. Carol took it. She didn't say anything yet. Todd looked past her into the barn. His eyes moved across the stalls, the crate she used as a table, her camp stove, her bags. He made a note on his clipboard. Then he looked back at her. I want to be clear about one thing, he said. His tone shifted. Less official, more pointed. Anything found on or removed from this property, personal effects from the estate, any contents of structures, those items are part of the property assessment. If anything has been removed or concealed, that creates a legal problem for the person who removed it. He held her gaze. I'm telling you that for your own benefit. He didn't know about the hatch. She was certain of that. He was giving a general warning, the kind you deliver when securing a property and you don't know what's been touched. But Carol knew about the hatch. And she knew what was under the floor. Understood, she said. He left. Now here's the thing. This is where the story changed, not just for Carol, but in terms of what was actually at stake. She had 48 hours. If Harlow completed the tax lien acquisition, everything on this property became his. The grain sacks, the hatch, the strongbox, the coins, the journals, all of it. And if Todd's warning meant what it sounded like, that concealing any of that made her liable, then she was already in a complicated position just for being there. She went back underground and sat at the table. She could leave, take nothing, walk away. That was the cleanest option for her personally. She could take the coins. She needed money badly enough that the thought sat in her head for a full minute before she pushed it out. She pushed it out not because she was a saint. She pushed it out because she'd read Earl's first journal entry. Because she'd looked at what this room was and what it meant and who had built it. You don't take a man's life's work and walk away with it. That was just a line she wasn't going to cross. Which left the third option. She needed to find out who this property actually belonged to. She picked up the journals one by one and read them properly this time. Not skimming. Reading. Margaret had continued writing in the same books after Earl died. Her entries started in 1962, right after the funeral. Short at first, then longer as the years went on. She wrote about the farm, the weather, her daughter Ruth who had moved to Des Moines and called every Sunday. Then there was an entry from January 2011. Ruth had died. Car accident on I-80. The entry was 2 sentences. Carol set the book down for a moment. Then she kept reading. In 2014, Margaret wrote about a falling out with her granddaughter Beth. I said something I should not have said, and now she won't return my calls. I am 90 years old, and I am not sure I know how to fix this. I am going to keep trying. 3 months later. Still no word from Beth. I try on Sundays. I will keep trying. In 2017, I tried calling Beth. The number doesn't work anymore. I wrote a letter, but I don't know if I have the right address. The last journal entry, 2018. I don't know how much longer I can manage this farm alone. I talked to someone at the county about an assisted living arrangement. I hate the thought of it, but I'm tired. I'm just very tired. I put the room in order as best I could. I put the letter on the table. Carol stopped. She looked at the table, at the stack of journals. She lifted the top journal, then the one beneath it. And there it was. She hadn't noticed it her first night. It had been underneath the stack. A plain white envelope, unsealed. On the outside, in Margaret's handwriting, for whoever finds this. She opened it. Inside, a handwritten letter, 3 pages, and a smaller sealed envelope labeled, Contact for Beth. She read the letter standing up because she couldn't make herself sit down. Margaret explained all of it. The property, the history of the room. Earl's gold coins. She listed the date of each one. She acknowledged that she'd never gotten around to updating the legal documents. I should have called a lawyer years ago. I kept meaning to. Time has a way of running ahead of you when you're not watching. Her daughter Ruth had died before her. That meant the property passed by right to Beth, Ruth's daughter, Margaret's granddaughter. I'm not sure Beth even knows she's the heir, she wrote. We lost touch. It's my fault. I said something unkind a long time ago, and I've regretted it every Sunday since. The last paragraph said, I hope you found this because you needed shelter, not because something terrible happened here. Whatever is in this room belongs by right to Beth. Please tell her. Tell her the room was always here. Tell her I thought about her every Sunday. Carol folded the letter carefully. She held it for a moment. Then she picked up the smaller envelope with Beth's contact information. She had 48 hours. And now she knew exactly what she was going to do with them. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. This story is not done. She didn't have much battery left. She charged her phone to 40% on the portable charger she'd kept alive through all of this, and she made the call. Portland area code. It rang 4 times. She was about ready to hang up when a woman answered. Hello. Is this Beth? Carol said. Beth Walcott. Who is this? My name is Carol Simmons. I'm calling about your grandmother, Margaret Fenton. I'm on the property right now, the farm on Route 9. She took a breath. I think you need to hear what I found. The pause was long enough that Carol thought she'd lost the call. Then, she passed away 2 years ago. I know. I'm sorry. Carol kept her voice level. I've been staying in the barn. I found an underground room beneath the floor. I found your grandmother's journals. And I found a letter she left. She said to contact you. Another long silence. What underground room? Beth said. Carol told her everything. She stood in the underground room while she did it, surrounded by Earl's shelves and Margaret's carefully folded blankets. And she went through all of it from the beginning. The draft, the hatch, the room, the shelves, the strongbox, the 7 gold coins, the journals, Margaret's letter. She read the last paragraph out loud, the one about Beth. When she finished, the line was quiet. She never told me about any of this, Beth finally said. Her voice had dropped. Not cold. Something closer to grief, coming in from a distance. I know. She wrote that she kept meaning to. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 years. A pause. We had a fight. I can't even remember what it was actually about anymore. You know how those go. It starts about one thing and it becomes about everything else. And by the time it's over you've said things that can't be unsaid. Carol knew. She didn't say so. Okay, Beth said. Something had shifted in her voice. The grief was still there, but a kind of focus had come in alongside it. I need to call a lawyer. I need you to not move anything and not let anyone else into that barn until I tell you it's clear. Can you do that? I'm not going anywhere, Carol said. Beth moved fast. Within 2 hours, she'd reached a property attorney in Iowa City and filed an emergency notice of heirship. The attorney contacted the county. Harlow Development's tax lien claim hit a wall it couldn't get through. There was a known, living heir, and that heir was now represented by counsel. The claim didn't collapse immediately. Took 2 more days to fully resolve. And those 2 days were not quiet. Todd came back on the second morning. This time he skipped the clipboard and the official tone. He told Carol that Harlow's legal team believed the heirship filing had procedural errors. He told her that if she had removed or concealed any property assets, she was looking at criminal liability under Iowa statute. He used the word liability 3 times in 2 minutes. Carol let him finish. Beth Walcott's attorney handles all questions about the property, she said. His name is David Carver. His office is on Iowa Avenue in Iowa City. She read the name off the paper Beth had texted her. Would you like the number? Todd looked at her for a moment. Then he left. On the 3rd day, Beth arrived. She drove from the Des Moines airport in a rental car. Carol watched her come across the gravel. Mid-40s, dark hair going gray at the edges. She walked slowly, looking at the farmhouse, then the barn, then the land around it. She stopped at the barn door and didn't say anything for a moment. I haven't been here since I was 11, Beth said. My mom brought me every summer. She looked at the farmhouse. There used to be a tire swing off that oak. The tree's still there, Carol said. The swing's gone. Beth looked at her. Can you show me the room? They went down together. Carol had been underground enough times by now that she moved through the hatch and down the steps without thinking. Beth came down slower. She put her hand on the stone wall as she descended. She stood in the middle of the room and turned around slowly. Same motion Carol had made her first night. Same instinct, to see all of it at once. She reached out and touched the back of one of the wooden chairs. She ran her hand along the edge of a shelf. She stopped at the stack of journals. She opened the top one, found Earl's first entry from April 1933, and read it without speaking. She closed the book. He built all of this himself? By hand, Carol said. 3 months. He didn't even tell Margaret until it was done. Beth looked at the shelves, at the canned goods in their rows, at the newer cans placed alongside the older ones. She kept restocking it, Carol said, into her 90s, from what the journals say. Beth pressed her lips together and didn't say anything for a moment. Then she opened the strongbox. She lifted one of the double eagle coins and held it up the same way Carol had, turning it in the lantern light, the eagle catching the glow. "Do you know what these are worth?" Carol asked. "No. I looked it up. A 1927 double eagle in this condition is somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 to a collector. You've got 7 of them." She paused. "An auction house in Des Moines could tell you exactly." Beth set the coin back. She closed the box. "Why did you call me?" she asked. She wasn't accusing. She was genuinely asking. "You didn't have to. You could have just taken these and been gone." Carol thought about how to answer that honestly. "Because they're yours," she said. "And because Margaret asked me to." Beth looked around the room one more time. At the ventilation shaft Earl had built into the stone. At the table where Margaret had left the letter for a stranger she'd never meet. At the lantern throwing its warm circle across the ceiling. "I want you to stay on the property," Beth said. "I need a caretaker. My life is in Portland, I can't move here. But I can't let this place sit empty again." She paused. "The farmhouse needs work. I can fund the repairs. Once it's livable, it's yours to live in. Small monthly stipend while you're getting set up." She met Carol's eyes. "You called me when you had no reason to. You protected what was here. I don't know what else to do but say thank you." The room was quiet around them. The lantern held steady. "Okay," Carol said. The legal process took 6 weeks. Beth's attorney cleared the heirship filing and the property formally transferred into her name. Harlow's claim was dismissed. "Frank Harlow himself called the farm once," Carol answered. "He got 2 sentences out before she hung up." The 7 gold coins went to an auction house in Des Moines. Together they brought $18,400. Not a fortune by most measures, but enough. Beth used part of it to fund the repairs. She insisted Carol take a finder's share, $1,500. Carol tried to decline. Beth didn't let her. The farmhouse work took most of the winter. Carol found a local contractor named Will, semi-retired, who knew old construction and was glad to have a project through the cold months. They worked alongside each other, Will on the structure, the plumbing, the roof. Carol on the interior. She'd never done that kind of work before. Stripping floors, patching plaster, rebuilding kitchen cabinets one by one. She found she was good at it. She found she liked it. She moved in at the start of February. First night in an actual bed in months. She lay in the dark and listened to the house settle around her. Different sounds than the barn. Different than the underground room. Bigger. More permanent. She got a job at the pharmacy in town. Stocking and cashiering, 30 hours a week. The people were decent. The town was small enough that the story got around, some version of it. The woman who found what was under the Fenton barn. She didn't correct anyone. She let them wonder. Beth called every few weeks. They'd talk for an hour. Carol learned that Beth was a landscape designer, that she'd spent every summer on this farm as a kid, that the falling out with Margaret had started over something Beth still wouldn't fully explain. Just something I said that I shouldn't have. Carol didn't push. She understood that some things take time to say out loud. Beth started sending ideas for what the property could look like in 5 years. Proper kitchen garden. Native plantings along the fence line. She wanted to restore the farmhouse exterior to its original color. A deep barn red that showed up in an old photograph she'd found in Margaret's things. Carol took notes. They made plans. It was, Carol realized, the closest thing to a real friendship she'd had in years. She went back into the underground room 3 times that first winter. The first time, she went to properly clean and inventory it. She cataloged the shelves, keeping what she could trust, carefully disposing of the rest. She wiped down the stone walls and checked the ventilation shaft. While she was working, she found something behind a loose stone near the far wall that she'd missed on her first night. A small glass jar sealed tight. Inside, folded and tucked in carefully, a note in Earl's handwriting. Just 1 sentence. "For whoever finds this place in hard times, we were here before you and we made it through. You will too." She read it twice. Then she folded it back up, put it in the jar, and put the jar back behind the stone. Some things are better left where they belong. The The second time she went down was to show Will, who'd heard about the room through the work and asked with such genuine curiosity she couldn't say no. He stood in the middle of the room and did what everyone did, turned around slowly, taking it all in. He built this by hand? Will said. 3 months. Depression era. Every stone placed himself. Will shook his head slowly. People don't work like this anymore. Some people do, Carol said. The third time was in late March. She wasn't looking for anything. She just sat at Earl's table with the lantern on for a while. Not reading. Not cataloging. Just sitting in the quiet that only underground rooms have. A complete quiet, nothing filtering through. She thought about what it means to find something when you aren't looking for it. She hadn't come to the Fenton barn to find anything. She'd come because she was out of options and the door didn't latch. She'd found the hatch because she sat down in exactly the right spot when she was exhausted. She'd found Margaret's letter because the journals happened to be stacked on top of it. None of it was planned. None of it was deserved, exactly. It just happened to a person who needed it to happen. She thought about Earl. Building this room because he wouldn't accept losing everything a second time. Setting those stones himself. Fitting them by hand. And she thought about Margaret. Carrying cans of food down those 8 steps into her 90s. Keeping faith with something her husband had built. For people she'd never meet. 2 people who built things meant to outlast them. And they had. Carol blew out the lantern and climbed back up. It was a Sunday in late March and the ground had thawed just enough. She got the gardening tools she'd bought at the hardware store. Small ones, nothing fancy. And she knelt in the dirt at the edge of the farmhouse, where Beth had said the afternoon light would be best. She pressed both hands into the soil. Her knees went down. Same posture as that first night in the barn. Same hands and knees in the dirt. But everything else was different. The cold was gone. She wasn't falling. She wasn't surrendering. She was planting. Kale and garlic and 2 kinds of herbs with names she'd written on small paper tags, pressed into the ground beside each one. She worked until the light shifted across the yard. Then she stood up, brushed the soil off her hands and went inside. Behind her, the farm stretched out in the late afternoon sun. The barn, the old oak, the outline of the property that had sat waiting for someone who needed it. It had found her.